WF shirt. Let's get right into it. You're about to hear Robert F. Kennedy say something really touching to Joe Rogan, really giving him his recognition in a way that a lot of people, many people, don't give him this type of recognition. And within that, he talks about a speech that JFK gave, and it's very interesting, the take that JFK has about the Russians and, what they actually went through. He's just displaying a lot of empathy in this speech, a lot of putting himself in their shoes at such a crazy time to do that. So I'm going to play a little bit of that speech for you, but this is a clip that a lot of people aren't going to consider as anything, but on this show I like to pull out all the clips that I think are things that should stand out to people. So we're going to get into that. But before we do, I got to bring you to the store. You've heard of the Great Reset. Well, don't give in to it. Join the Great Resist instead. Resist the tyranny that is upon us. Show them that your soul is not for sale. I gotta have like a whole list of things I say. And then show them that you're not going to join the WEF. Those are the 3 designs. We got hoodies, we got shirts, we got t-shirts, women's sizes, all that good stuff. Every single purchase helps us out tremendously. You have no idea. And if you're one of those people who have spent anything at that store, you are so appreciated. Thank you so much. Now let's get into this clip. Let's close this here. There it is. Let's go.
First of all, I want to say this, that what you let me do just now, which probably lost a lot of your listeners because nobody wants to listen to.
No. I do not think that's true at all.
But I'm so grateful to you because, for 18 years, nobody's let me do that. I mean, actually, Jon Stewart let me do that in 2005. And you can go look at his and Scarborough, Joe Scarborough, in 2005 when my article came out, and that was it. And then they immediately, a week later, were disavowing me.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
And you've been like a hero. I mean, you're an institution that's kind of a critical institution of this era, because you've maintained this little island of free speech in a sort of a desert of suppression and of critical thinking, which is, you've been a champion of critical thinking. My uncle, when my aunt Jackie met my uncle, John Kennedy, he was a senator and a confirmed bachelor, and she was a reporter, a journalist, and she did this kind of man-on-the-street interviews with people, these kind of quick interview, and she asked him what his best quality was. And she expected him to say courage because he'd been a war hero and he had written a book and won a Pulitzer Prize for profiles in courage. But the answer that he gave her was curiosity. And I think that is the quality that made him a great president, because he was able to put himself in other people's shoes. He had a level of empathy about other humans where he was always thinking about what it would be like. Why would people do things that and act in certain ways, including Khrushchev and Castro. And when he had conversations and exchanges with those people, he was able to put himself in their shoes. And actually, his most important speech was the speech he gave 60 years ago, 3 days ago. It was the 60th of June 10th of 1963. And it was the speech at American University about trying to persuade Americans to change their minds, because they were universally against the nuclear atmospheric test ban treaty that he was trying to push. And that speech turned the country around. It was one of the most important, impactful speeches in history. And in that speech, he told Americans what it was like to be Russian. It was the strangest speech. And, because I was raised, and most Americans of that era were raised thinking that we won World War II. And he said to them, we believe this. I was watching Combat Vic Morrow with Combat, every week with my brothers. It was all about how the Americans won. And he said, that's not what happened. The Russians won the war, and they paid in a way that no nation should ever have to pay. 1 in every 7 Russians died, at Hitler's hands. And 1/3 of the Russian, he said, imagine if America, every city and every building was leveled from the East Coast to Chicago. That's what happened to Russia. And he was telling Americans, they're not evil. They're having a rational reaction. When they develop a nuclear bomb, they don't want to be invaded again. And we have to somehow make them feel safe if we're going to have peace in this world. It was just a beautiful, beautiful speech.
All right, let's get some of that speech real quick. There it is.
And every graduate of this school, every thoughtful citizen who despairs of war and wishes to bring peace should begin by looking inward, by examining his own attitude towards the possibilities of peace, towards the Soviet Union, towards the course of the Cold War, and towards freedom and peace here at home. First, examine our attitude towards peace itself. Too many of us think it is impossible. Too many think it is unreal. But that is a dangerous, defeatist belief. And second, let us re-examine our attitude towards the Soviet Union. No government or social system is so evil that its people must be considered as lacking in virtue. As Americans, we find communism profoundly repugnant as a negation of personal freedom and dignity. But we can still hail the Russian people for their many achievements in science and space, in economic and industrial growth, in culture, in acts of courage. Among the many traits the peoples of our two countries have in common, none is stronger than our mutual abhorrence of war. Almost unique among the major world powers, we have never been at war with each other. And no nation in the history of battle ever suffered more than the Soviet Union in the Second World War. At least 20 million lost their lives. Countless millions of homes and families were burned or sacked. 1/3 of the nation's territory, including 2/3 of its industrial base, was turned into a wasteland, a loss equivalent to the destruction of this country east of Chicago. Today, should total war ever break out again, no matter how, our two countries will be the primary target. It is an ironic but accurate fact that the two strongest powers are the two in the most danger of devastation. All we have built, all we have worked for, would be destroyed in the first 24 hours. And even in the Cold War, which brings burdens and dangers to so many countries, including this nation's closest allies, our two countries bear the heaviest burdens. For we are both devoting massive sums of money to weapons that could be better devoted to combat ignorance, poverty, and disease. We are both caught up in a vicious and dangerous cycle, with suspicion on one side breeding suspicion on the other, and new weapons begetting counter-weapons. In short, both the United States and its allies, and the Soviet Union and its allies, have a mutually deep interest in a just and genuine peace.
I wasn't even supposed to play that much. I just got caught up in it. Wow. All right, so let's switch back to what Robert was saying. Beautiful speech. Wow. All right, let's go back.
And it came, I think, because he had that gift of curiosity, and you have that, and I think, and you have this love for critical thinking and this admiration. You have this parade of people on here, like the Weinsteins and all these other people who are thinking out of the box and who are not subsumed in orthodoxies, but are able to break away from those orthodoxies and have come in and see the humanity in everybody and everything, and it's beautiful. So I think when the history of this time is written, that you will have the role that you played in it, and if we manage to get our way out of this kind of totalitarian trajectory, I think a lot of that will be, because of what you did.
Man, a big compliment to get from Mr. Kennedy. Wild compliment. And of course, Joe doesn't even think of saying thank you. He doesn't want to take that type of responsibility because that's how he is. Tries to keep it extremely humble. But it's so true. And I've heard a lot of people, in the comments, there's one person particular, like he should have to interview Trump. All candidates should get to speak at length. And it's like, Trump gets to speak at length. He gets to do rally. We get to see when Trump talks. We all get to see. The whole world's put on notice when Trump talks. The whole world's forced to listen to Biden talk. But whenever Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has a chance to speak, the mainstream media just blacks out. They just push it aside. They act like it doesn't exist. They don't give him the time of day. He was on breaking points. He couldn't talk for more than 30 seconds without getting interrupted by Crystal Ball, which was disgusting. Anywhere he goes, it's constantly like that. People have to make sure that the people watching on the camera know that I don't agree with this guy. Just so you know, I'm gonna do my best to not let him talk because I know we don't agree with what he has to say. So, with that attitude towards someone who's doing a podcast, Joe Rogan, he doesn't have to have every candidate on. He's trying to give people who don't get to speak a chance, which is why you saw Peter McCullough on his podcast throughout the pandemic. You saw Robert Malone. You saw so many different people, who had a different narrative than what was being pushed in the past 3-4 years. It's not something that he has to do. He could literally have the same success and just interview comedians and have a good time, smoke weed, and just laugh all day. He could just do that. He didn't have to have Jordan Peterson on when Jordan Peterson was, talking about, not using people's pronouns at a university. Like, he was no one at the time. He didn't have to have David Goggins on. He doesn't have to have Jocko on. He doesn't have to do any of that. It could just be his friends. You know what I mean? All the time. It could just be comedians all day, just laughing. So, again, not to say that I don't want to see him interview Trump. I would love to see that. I think that would be an amazing interview. If Trump could just keep it conversational and not try to play to the cameras and all the people he knows is watching and just talk, I think it'd be an incredible interview. People always think of Trump as some politician. Do you know the wealth of knowledge he has as a real estate investor? How much you could learn from him about making money, where he came from, about his father, his grandfather. How much family history he has? He could talk about the mob ties that people speculate that his father had, which he really didn't, but the mob was so prevalent in New York that you couldn't help but bump into a mobster here and there in his father's time, and a little bit of his youth as well. There's so much to talk about Trump about. So if he could just not keep it off of, but make it about something else other than just politics, and then, bring the politics in as well. Talk about the indictment, talk about, as much as he can. It'd be great, obviously. But the reason that Robert F. Kennedy is on the podcast, the reason that he gets to speak, literally, there's almost an hour long of just Robert talking, is because no one lets him do that. That's the reason why he did it. So again, this is not Netflix. This is not, I'm pressing the button. I deserve to see the things I want to see all the time. You got to remember, there's a guy on the other side of that has his own podcast and own things that he wants to do. It's his life. So a lot of people just have that thinking. I'm one of those people too sometimes, I want to see him interview Tucker Carlson. Whether he wants to do it or not, I just want to see it, and I want him to do it for 5 hours. And I want him to do another one in 6 months. That's just me, But, yeah, very special that he said that. And very special speech by JFK. At that time, 1963, to say things like that about the Russian people, to almost be showing empathy, showing sympathy, and holding them up on a pedestal almost. In that time, It's crazy. But that's what that family has shown themselves to be about, the Kennedys. That's what they've shown themselves to be about empathy and about truth and about saying and doing the right thing, even to your detriment. That speech was a perfect example of that. And Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has been a perfect example of that as he's been running for president. So I just wanted to show you guys that clip. Like the video. If you've watched this far, give it a like. It's over there. It's over there. I don't know. You know where it is. Come on. It's your phone. You got the screen. You can see it. Like the video. It helps us so much. Helps me boost myself out of the shadow realm where I could be with the rest of the YouTubers who post the same clips. And yeah, I don't even want to get into it. But if you watch this far, thank you so much. Other than that, I'm out.